Hello everyone, welcome to an analysis of dance where we discuss the movements and debuts of the Billboard dance charts in immaculate detail with in-depth reviews of each debut each week. I shouldn't be remotely surprised that this week turned out the way it did. Honestly, I'm kind of amazed that it actually turned out as good as it did in that regard. Yes, we got a decently sized album bomb from ILLENIUM on Hot Dance as well as that big debut from Calvin Harris, and when you have a grand total of 13 debuts, the majority of which are surprisingly pretty good and spread out across two of the major charts and one per smaller charts. Honestly, it comes together to a week that's actually pretty impressive. I was surprised at how much I liked a lot of this. And of course, before we get into the depths of that quality, let's discuss the top 10 on Hot Dance. And we actually have Dracula by Tame Impala taking back the #1. I mean, not without an extra boost from, let's just call it an interesting remix with Jenny. And honestly, the fact that a solo member of Blackpink is able to give this level of huge boost on both sales and streaming, the latter of which is something that never really happens when it comes to K-pop acts, yeah, that's legitimately impressive. And the fact that this has actually gone back to #1 again and looks like it's going to stick around with decent streaming and decent sales, and as well as radio actually still being on board with this a surprisingly late run after it actually debuted on the Hot 100, yeah, that might be a sign that this will hold the top for another couple of weeks. I'm not going to complain about that. It's still a great track, and even if I wasn't huge on the remix, I'm at least happy it's still here. And really, it was going to happen anyways because No Broke Boys by Disco Lons and Tinashe just collapsed down to #2, and really the streaming was falling on this one. It's got no radio support left and sales are only decent at best. I'm not exactly surprised this finally lost the top. It's at least nice that there's some competition there, although I say that when you look outside the top 2, there is nothing that's even remotely close, like Let the World Burn by Chris Gray, Rebel and Cried at #3, which is off the bubbling under again, and streaming is pretty much done with it. Yeah, this has no chance of coming back to the top anytime soon. Not exactly upset about that. And that unfortunately opens up the door for No Baddie Down by Zyklek and Slaughter at #4. Thank God that this scene is losing legs fast, as this is really the only track that's gaining significant stream momentum right now, even if there are some that are rising up due to lack of competition. I mean, I can at least hope that this will mark the final year that we have to deal with this crap. This song's not awful, it's not one of the worst ones in the scene, but it's not good either. And especially considering it knocks down I Run by Haven featuring Caitlin Arrogant at #5. Ironically, on the week, it tops Dance Airplay, and considering that Haven's actually come out with a new remix of Waterfalls by James Hype that's not very good at all, yeah, the momentum has died off. I'm not exactly upset about that. But on the opposite end, we've got Victory Lap by Fred Against Skepta and Pluck Boy Max, again, only down to #6. And it's once again likely to get a massive boost thanks to yet another new single that's doing ridiculously well on streaming. Jesus Christ, dude, I get that you're really passionate about music, and this roller has been ridiculously successful, but you can take a breather. This is a lot for me to handle as a fan. I mean, thank God it's still above All the Things She Said by Harrison down to #7, where it looks like the streaming momentum for this has finally died off and sales are pretty much done with it too. Glad that it's finally hit its peak this late in its run. We could have gotten rid of this a while ago. Hell, I'm surprised that beneath it we've actually got Turn the Lights Off by Kato featuring John jumping up to #8 until you realize that a big song that hit the top 10 last week fell out as expected. And considering that sales and streaming are holding decently for this one, I expect it will probably end up sticking around a little longer than I think most people expected. Not gonna complain there. And it's more interesting though because it actually beat out the expected debut at #9 that everyone pretty much called being the big hit from this album rollouts, Don't Want Your Love by ILLENIUM and Ellie Goulding. I mean, I can see this having legs considering the sound's very accessible, it's got good streaming behind it, there's even a bit of a radio push really fast early on. This looks like it's gonna stick around, and yeah, huge win in that regard. We'll talk about it later on. And finally, I Think I'm Addicted by Oscar Medkay and Haley Joel at #10. Not surprising this is holding at all considering that the streaming momentum has been solid, and because once again a certain song fell out of the top 10, it was gonna last, thank God for that. But now onto the huge aftermath of a massive week like this in terms of debuts, when we get to our fall-offs, and oh my God, there are so many to note here. Outside of Fred Against other singles actually leaving the charts, which again is proof that people really need to move on from Victory Lap at this point, we had 3 songs that were guaranteed to be kicked out regardless considering the influx of debuts and the fact that 2 of them are falling victim to the 26-week rule, and man, I'm not going to complain about these at all. yes, it does suck that we lost Kisses by Bless and Cameron Watson featuring BB Close, but realistically that song should not have returned as long as it did at all. I'm amazed it actually lasted 26 weeks. And when it's taking out two absolute piles of trash in Montegem Rugada by Say False Cape and Jandro, and Desire by Ian Asher and Ollie Alexander, I mean, that's a net win across the board, especially when Ian Asher is going to lose his other song next week to the 26-week rule and nothing's showing up afterwards. Good. And our three falls are not exactly ones that I'm hugely bothered by either. I mean, the two songs I do like are My Old Ways by Tate Impala at 22 and Crystallize by John Summer featuring Inez at 21, but they've already easily locked their year in list spots. And in the latter case, he also lost Lights Go Out Down Hard to 11, and I can only hope with the new single next week that this doesn't end up lasting. Good riddance. And hey, the good news continues, as even though we had no jumps as expected given the huge amount of debuts, we got the welcome return of In My Arms by ILLENIUM and Halo at 25. Look, it sucks that some of the other good singles from this album didn't really get any chance to return. If it was 50 songs long, this would have been a much different conversation. But hey, I'm at least happy that one of the best hits from the album that genuinely stuck around really well last year is actually having another minor run again. Even if it won't last next week, it is nice to see here. But before we get to the other debuts from Odyssey, let's start off surprisingly with number 23, Rain by Fisher. I'm kind of really surprised that we're actually seeing a new Fisher song chart on the Hot Dance charts in 2026. I mean, I shouldn't be. He's one of the biggest Australian tech house names out there, generally has a consistent track record when it comes to single releases. But given that both Stay and Blackberries didn't end up sticking around that much at all, let alone actually chart on the Hot Dance charts last year, I had no expectations that this would actually chart either. And yeah, here it is, charting pretty low, but still actually managing to get there, which is kind of surprising. And considering that he's rebounded considerably in quality since Sunboy 2024, I was at least curious if this would be able to match the quality of both Stay and Blackberries, and I mean, okay, it's not as good as them, but I actually didn't mind. This is pretty nice. More of an old school approach to the synth melodies that bend across the mix and actually sound really well produced against the female cooing and vocals that honestly sound pretty solid. They actually work into this mix quite well, and when you have such upbeat drops with a really credible bass line and some genuine progression to them, yeah, it's proof that, again, that Fisher is actually learning and producing well nowadays. I mean, if I was nitpicking, I wish that a song with this title would sound more aquatic in nature. It does feel a little bit lacking in atmosphere, and the vocals don't necessarily fit as much as I would have liked either. Again, they are good, but they do feel like they would have been better on a different instrumental. But you know what? If it means that we're getting more stuff from Fisher in this vein that's actually charting and sounding pretty damn good, I wouldn't mind more of this. It's pretty damn solid. It is a good track. Number 20, Cook by Sofi Tukker and J Balvin. It always kind of blows my mind that Sofi Tukker's got the level of silent majority audience where they can get literally any of their lead singles to actually chart here, and in this case, considering that Bread actually got some decent charting presence despite not being an album that I could remember at all after hearing it, I mean, I shouldn't even be remotely surprised that their collaboration with J Balvin and their big comeback single has charted here, especially considering his association with one of the biggest cultural moments in music with the Bad Bunny Super Bowl performance, and really he's in the public eye right now thanks to Lacan John. I'm not exactly surprised that this ended up actually charting. And honestly, I was kind of surprised by this one. More of a weirder blend of mid-tempo with some synthwave leaning synths that actually don't really feel that out of place, surprisingly. All against some surprisingly really heavy bass and even a house beat to switch up for J Balvin's verse where his deadpan rap delivery actually surprisingly works well. I actually can understand why he's on here. And that's not all. Tukker's voice is surprisingly blended into this mix really well, and unlike a lot of his other appearances, I actually welcome his presence here. He does fit well here, unfortunately a lot more than Sofi, who just feels a lot more stranded in this mix and doesn't really fit much at all. That's kind of shocking to me. But honestly, even with that, I actually really like the vibe of this quite a bit. It is a little bit slow and admittedly not the sort of thing that I would really go out of my way to listen to again, but when you have lyrics that are complete and utter nonsense where they're talking about cooking up something hot and making you watch it, very K-pop inspired in a way, and and I get that from a multicultural perspective, considering Sofi's dalliances with other cultures has been not exactly something that she's hidden over the years. Honestly though, I actually like the experimentation that they took here, and even if there is a bit of a jarring whiplash between the content and the sound, overall it's mostly ignorable in that problem, and yeah, this is actually pretty solid. I would like to hear more from this album rollout. This is actually pretty interesting. Number 19, Neck by Mal P. Of expecting disappointments thanks to shockingly inconsistent careers. I mean, could you really blame me for not being excited for this? I mean, it's not surprising off the back of consistent sales supports and some decent streaming that Mal P is actually able to chart here again, but considering that a lot of his material recently has been mediocre at best to outright garbage at worst, I had no expectations this would be good either. But you know what, after hearing this, I was actually pleasantly surprised by this one. I find it pretty okay as well, maybe even good. Definitely feels a lot more throwbacky than even Rain, with the acidic sounding synths and a rap vocal sample that's integrated surprisingly well. Kind of reminds me of those old boom bap hits from back in the 90s, and that's a huge compliment. And when there's actually some good interplay between the treble synths and that farty bass synth, it honestly makes for a really interesting melodic switch from Mal P that I'm honestly kind of surprised that he went down, but it actually sounds pretty nice. And when the vocal samples add to the mix and make it feel a lot more lively than you'd expect, honestly, I was pretty impressed by this. It's actually a pretty solid banger. Not the best thing that Mal P's made by any means, but considering the low standards I hold him nowadays, this is pretty good. I wouldn't mind if this stuck around. Number 18, Slave to the Rhythm by ILLENIUM and Bring Me the Horizon.
Don't worry, I'll keep all the secrets safe. I'm hanging on to every word you say.
But now we get onto Odyssey proper, and honestly I'm not exactly surprised that a lot of the album didn't end up charting and didn't have the same level of impact that some people expected. Yes, we saw 3 songs from it make charting presence on a 25 song charts, but when you consider that even the older 50 song charts had ILLENIUM album bombs debuting pretty damn high, the fact that not only did these singles not really last outside of In Your Arms, but also the album fell off this quickly from everyone's radar, that's not exactly a good sign. And it's not surprising that the 2 songs that charted had the most high profile guest features on them, starting with the Bring Me the Horizon collab, where I'm honestly shocked that they've charted 3 songs on Hot Dance at this point. And yeah, admittedly it's the weaker of the 2, but again, I didn't find this bad at all. It's got only one noticeable error that really holds it back from being genuinely great for me, and that really says a lot. So let's get to that error right off the gate. Seriously, what is that drop in the middle of this track? I get that you're trying to match Bring Me the Horizon's darker metallic energy, but having a dubstep drop in the middle of a song like this just makes 0 sense to me. And while I do like that Ollie Sykes has been allowed a little bit of space to actually show off his intense and really welcome growls across the track, even then it just feels out of place next to his melodic singing on the verses that are a lot lighter. I don't really understand why this drop was here at all. Shame too, because the rest of this is great. It's got a lot more of an upbeat sound to it, leaning closer to trance in terms of the first and third drops here, and they honestly sound really good. And when you have those absolutely stunning synth arrangements on the verses that create that massive atmosphere that you'd expect out of ILLENIUM nowadays, honestly the rest of this track is genuinely great. I can absolutely understand why people are on board with it. Shame about the dubstep drop, because otherwise I really like this, but that drags it down to only being good for me. It really should be better than it is. Number 15, Release the Pressure by Calvin Harris and Kasabian.
Hypnotized by the lights upon your face.
Okay, wow, of all the names that I didn't expect to actually see chart here, Kasabian might be one of the most surprising for me, and it honestly feels a little bit overdue for them. Now, truth be told, I've heard more around this band than I've actually heard their music proper. Not helped by the domestic violence case with Tom Vaughan, that really gave me no interest to listen to their music proper, which is a shame because from what I've heard from others who've actually heard it, the music might be up my alley in a very distinct UK indie rock vein. All the more ironic because in order to chart on Hot Dance, they have to work with one of the biggest names out of the British dance scene. That's really ironic. And honestly, this continues Calvin Harris's pretty damn good streak of both Blessings and Ocean in terms of creating some really rock solid house music, even if admittedly I don't think this is as good as those two songs. More of a garage and tech house hybrid track, and I will admit that the garage elements here do feel a little bit lacking in terms of presence. I do wish that they took over more of the track than just the pre-drops. They could have been used a lot better here, and that's a shame too, because otherwise I absolutely love this. The vocals of Sergio have the sort of monotone and really dragged out delivery that honestly fits well into this production, and when those drops come in, the song just explodes into this really goddamn catchy track where the vocal line has been absolutely stuck in my head the last couple of days, and I've got to give credit where it's due. It honestly really does work for me quite a bit. It may not be as immediate as both Ocean and Blessings, but honestly the fact that this turned out really damn good regardless of the disconnect with the garage drops, that's a sign of a genuinely great track, and I don't really know if this is actually going to stick around at all considering how low it debuted, but I wouldn't mind if it did. We need more Calvin Harris quality on this chart. This is genuinely great. Number 9, Don't Want Your Love by ILLENIUM and Ellie Goulding.
Cause it hurts too much. You still hold me when we kiss away the pain. Never again.
And of course, we've got the big one for last. The collaboration that everyone expected would absolutely break through as the highest debut from this album, and unsurprisingly, it did really damn well. Ellie Goulding's got that sort of drive and presence to her where she can make anything cross over to hot dance if she put her name on it. And yeah, for damn good reason, I'd argue it's easily the best track on the album, or at least one of the serious highlights for me. More in the house direction, and unlike Refuge, it actually feels a lot more intense and interesting. Closer to the future rave and future techno movements that artists like Anima have been popularizing recently, and I'll be damned if ILLENIUM didn't absolutely nail this production. This is really impressive. The darker swelling bass and those plucky synths on the verses are absolutely stunning, all with a helpful dose of reverb that adds to the atmosphere and makes it feel larger than anything, one of the biggest strengths of ILLENIUM consistently over the years. And that's before the drops, where the lead gets even louder and fizzy at the very front of the mix against some percussion that allows for some actual genuine groove. It doesn't feel overstated or weak in either way. It's actually really nice. And on that note, god damn, this might be the most intense delivery that I've heard from Ellie Goulding in a hot minute. She absolutely commands that hook and goes into a gruffier belting tone that I honestly didn't expect from her at all this late in her career. She absolutely sells the hell out of this, and when her vocals are still excellent melodically and fit into this vibe quite well, yeah, she elevates this once again. I absolutely get why even the non-fans of this album thinks this track is the best on the album. Fantastic track, really one of ILLENIUM's best in recent memory, and I can only hope it actually sticks around long enough to become a hit. This genuinely does deserve it. It's great. And hey, would you look at that? Even dance pop had at least one debut. I mean, low fucking bar, but at least we'll take what we can get, and even if I don't expect it will last, it's at least something. And that's funny because outside of that, all we have is really Aperture by Harry Styles at number 1, which is losing out on streaming really fast. If it wasn't for radio, this would be collapsing even more. And Upside Down by Diana Ross at 13. Honestly, I'm shocked that this is actually sticking around at all, considering that Stranger Things hype died down really long ago. I guess the hype must be good with this one. I'm not gonna complain. Again, it's a classic. And on the topic of hype dying down fast, that takes us to our new debut, unfortunately being number 10, Adrenaline by ATEEZ.
On my neck, pumping adrenaline. Let's go.
Okay, look, it feels really overdue that these guys actually ended up charting at all, especially considering that they've actually had some genuine presence on the Hot 100, and especially In Your Fantasy is as electronic sounding as you can get. It should have been on this chart at least for a couple of weeks, but honestly I had no idea what to expect here at all. On one hand, I do really like In Your Fantasy. It's one of my favorite non-hits of 2025 and honestly surprised me with how much I really got into the production there. But between the utter dud of Lemon Drop and the fact that one of their members worked with fucking Odyssey last year to absolutely no success, I had absolutely zero idea what to expect going into this, and yeah, I'm not impressed at all. In fact, I actively did not like like this. Firstly, I mean, guys, I know that K-pop has a habit of embracing really old school genres that are well out of date. I mean, they embraced dubstep back when K-pop as a movement was starting to really show some presence back in the mid-2010s, but with this, I mean, seriously, it's 2026. Why are we making a big room house track? I mean, the oversold build-up with some really bombastic synth production that does not fit with anything else in this mix whatsoever. All sounding really flat and lacking an atmosphere. And that's before we even build up to the drops where all the energy goes right out the window for some of the laziest and least interesting production I've heard in recent memory. The lead sounds like a leftover from the Jack U era. The bass sounds really cheap and farty. The vocals are mixed way too goddamn loud where they actively peak in the mix and really do not show off the harmonies between the boys at all. And the muddy layering on top of all this adds absolutely zero impact at all. It feels really cheap. Combine that with utterly generic self-empowerment lyrics that are complete nonsense as you'd expect out of K-pop, and they are incredibly generic. Yeah, no thank you for this. This is a complete dud for me and proof that this scene is having a really wildly inconsistent run over the last couple of years. And considering the lack of quality with this and the fact that it's really only here because of sales and some barely passable streaming at best, yeah, I expect this to be gone next week. Not good. But on to dance streaming, and look, there wasn't really much of a story outside of one particular case here at all. Yes, Aperture by Harry Styles was at number 1. I mean, it was at the top of the Hot 100 at one point, guys. The fall-off's not going to be as fast as everyone expects it will. And Poker Face by Lady Gaga scraping back at 15. Again, it's pretty normal at this point. But the big story, Dracula by Tame Impala at number 3. Again, it's because of that remix and the fact that it's blown up to this level where it's surged up over 10 spots. That's genuinely unreal to me, and again, I wish I liked the remix more, but this is really welcome to see for the original track. And moving on to dance sales, holy crap, there was a lot here, with 6 debuts, 4 of which are unique to this chart as well. Christ. And unfortunately, one of those debuts that I've already covered, Adrenaline by ATEEZ, debuted at number 1. Not surprising considering that it seems like a lot of K-pop fans have disposable income to help buy physical releases of these guys' music. I really hope it doesn't last though. This song is not remotely worth it. Hell, it probably explains why Dracula by Tame Impala is only back at number 2 instead of at number 1. Again, the K-pop fan base is going to boost anything, even a remix of an existing song that's charted for a while now. And outside of that, well, Abracadabra by Lady Gaga expectedly collapsed off of its number 1 down to number 7. Takedown and How It's Done by Huntrix fell to number 12 and number 14 respectively, as the movie's momentum is dying off pretty fast into 2026. Not really a huge deal in EJAE's case considering the new debut that she got that I'll cover later on. And Dancing Queen by ABBA hit 15, whatever. And outside of ATEEZ, well, thank God we at least got the debut of Neck by Malp at number 9. Not shocking to remotely anyone. Let's move on. And on that note, a pretty solid list of debuts too. Starting off with something that's a bit of a curveball here. Number 13, Mata Zyklek by Angine de Poitrine. I have absolutely no words to describe what the hell I'm even about to discuss here. And it's honestly the sort of bizarre case that you surprisingly don't see as much nowadays. This feels really surreal to see here. For those of you who don't know, and I include myself here considering I have not been tapped into this movement at all, Angine de Poitrine are a duo that came out of Quebec who have been making what they call microtonal math rock with a sort of cult audience that honestly is giving them a lot more sales support for an act that only started in 2024. And unsurprisingly, given their image and branding and the fact that they're going for a really unique sound that hasn't really seen a lot of mainstream traffic as of now, it doesn't surprise me that they actually managed to debut 2 songs here. Although their general hype in the live circuit and the fact that they've toured around Canada and France and are planning a US tour, that's probably likely the reason why both of these are even here at all. Ironically, both debuts are their recent material and nothing tied to their debut album from last year, so I was at least curious how this first one would turn out considering it came out a lot earlier, coming out in November last year. And you know what? All things considered, this still managed to really surprise me with the way it sounded. Think those classic surf rock songs from the 60s and 70s, and while the ethos and the underlying guitar strumming is absolutely there, they allow the empty space to take full stage to create a much weirder and less pleasant atmosphere than you'd expect out of that sort of sound. And that's before the percussion comes in with a really frantic energy and some surprisingly impressive craftsmanship across the production and also the melodies here. It's really goddamn impressive that for a song that sticks to a same general sound like this for over 6 minutes, it allows for some interesting moments to occur throughout, including some really impressive guitar solos that honestly really make me surprised that something like this is getting embraced at all. It's the sort of thing where I don't really fully consider it electronic, but slot it into the crowd rock movements of the late 60s and especially the first 3 albums from Kraftwerk before they went full electronic. I can kind of understand why Billboard allowed this to chart here, and yeah, it's generally better for it. I don't think I'll return to this particular track as much as I want to, but for what it is, this is really impressive. Nice to see a chart here, and on that note, number 11, Fabienk by Angine de Poitrine. The newest song that came out only 2 weeks ago, and damn, I can hear the electronic influence in this one a lot more. Right off the bat, you get this intense blaring synth that's legit sounding really menacing, all against the bass line and some really frantic percussion yet again, as the track just continues on this really energetic pathway, honestly closer to drum and bass than a lot of people would give credit. And when there's a distinct signature percussion style that this duo can call their own, all against more remarkable craftsmanship in the melodies where there's some really nice back and forth between the bass line and the guitar line. Yeah, this is legit impressive, and I actually might like this one even more. It's a case where listening more in depth reveals the little minute details in the production behind these tracks, and honestly makes the experience really worth it. These are songs that you need to listen to in full to get the proper listening experience out of. And when the added bass line adds some more heft and low end to this mix, yeah, it works a lot more for me. I'm really impressed by these debuts. I might have to follow these guys more in depth. If this is the level of quality that they're releasing nowadays, yeah, I'm on board. This is legitimately great. Number 8, Out of My Mind by Joshwa.
I think I'm out of my mind. I think I'm going insane. This beat is twisting my brain. I think I'm out of my mind. I think I'm going insane.
Man, it feels so jarring going from instrumental math rock to disposable tech house that you'd expect to chart here every other week. And in this guy's particular case, can you blame me for not being remotely interested in this? Joshua is one of those names that blew up thanks to a bunch of tech house covers, with his utterly misguided and badly produced remix of My Humps by the Black Eyed Peas that charted back in 2022 being utterly atrocious, and thankfully the sort of thing that flopped after second week sales came along and really killed it off. And when you go through his catalog and see remixes of Mercy by Duffy and Say My Name by Destiny's Child, can you blame me for not being interested in new material from him? But given the actually surprisingly decent numbers on this in terms of streaming, I was at least a little bit mildly curious, and you know what? Fair play. I actually didn't mind this either. Yes, it's blatantly chasing the same pluckier tech house sound that's been getting a lot more traffic thanks to songs like Back It Up by Josh Baker. Hell, I was immediately reminded of the melodies and sound of that track a lot when listening to this. They are a bit too similar for my liking, and I think that Back It Up is better. But I still really like that sound, and when it's welcome in tech house and actually sounds pretty nice alongside the much heavier percussion, but I still like that sound. It's welcome in tech house, and when you have those plucky synth leads that actually give some more interesting treble melody across the track, it honestly comes together to a pretty damn solid song. I'll give him credit for this one. I like it. It's pretty good. Number 5, Time After Time by EJAE.
I've been forgetting, then you pull a Banksy. One more door opens and I end up at your door. You're my after and before.
Okay, look, especially after scoring a perfect 100% year-end chart run back in 2025 with K-pop Demon Hunters, I was at least mildly curious how EJAE would be able to actually follow up that success, and honestly, the fact that she hasn't really seen a lot of momentum since then is a little bit surprising for me. I mean, I really liked Out of My Body with Anima quite a bit, and also I was hoping that there would be a lot of quality in her first solo release since K-pop Demon Hunters, and yeah, unfortunately I'm a lot more mixed on this than I would like to think. I mean, it's got a very pleasant garage house vibe, and EJAE is a good singer, you can't take that away from her, but I don't know, it feels a bit too sanitized and safe to really fully work for me, especially when you don't really have much in the way of a driving groove backing everything up. It feels a bit too cutesy for its own good, and when the drops are not remotely impressive or interesting enough to justify having that moment of thinking about an ex time after time again, especially on the dance floor, it just results in a track that's not memorable nor interesting, which for an EJAE solo track after some of the catchiest hits of last year, that's kind of disappointing for me. I mean, it's not awful, but I don't really think this is very good either. Sorry. But now onto media-based dance Airplay to end things off. And holy shit, this was also a really quality week, where even despite the fact that I'm only covering one debut this week on this particular chart, it's also worth noting that we got 4 more, all of which are genuinely great. So yeah, let's just get into this chart. Ironically, it's on the week where I Run by Haven featuring Caitlin Arican actually took #1, as the spin increase was just way too goddamn strong for anything to remotely come close. It was a landslide victory there. And additionally, I know some people still hold a grudge over Haven for the whole AI dilemma, and quite frankly, the fact that his material afterwards has been mediocre at best really implies that this will probably end up being his only major hit. But as someone who appreciates the legitimate article actually getting traffic over that AI produced original track, I mean, I'll at least still take this. It's still a good song. And it just bulldozed Bring Me to Life by Tiesto and Fours at #2, although that wasn't really surprising considering that he's released a new single which will likely chart soon, and considering that this is the sort of thing I'm surprised to even manage to hit #1 with how out there it is by his standards, I'll at least take it still being here. I'm not going to complain. Still had a massive lead over Don't Blame Me by James Carter at #3, which is losing out pretty fast on spins. Expect this to fall even harder next week. I'm just really happy it actually hit #1, and it's more exciting too because all of these open up the door for Midnight Sun by Zara Larsson surging to #4. Quite frankly, Zara Larsson's resurgence in popularity with this song absolutely doing massive numbers on radio, it says a lot about the quality of this year so far, and quite frankly, I'm thrilled that this is the one that's surging up fast. It's going to end up getting #1 for a couple of weeks. That's a massive win. Kinda leaves Phases by Joel Corey and Abby Flynn at #5 in a bit of a stranded position. Again, it's not exactly the sort of thing that I really expect will get any higher anytime soon. Again, I'm amazed it's still here. And on that note, Love You for Life by Loud Luxury and Emily Roberts at #6. You're seriously going to tell me that Uh-Oh underperformed while this crap stuck around? Really? Thank God Beneath It is Edge of Desire by Jonas Blue and Maliv at #7, and I expect this will easily go up. It's got a lot of radio appeal, it's a chill vibe going into summer and spring. I expect this to stick around, no problems at all there. And even more promising Beneath It is Faded by Hayla and Nelly Furtado at #8. Again, it's proof that Hayla's going to stick around past her debut album, and considering that none of her songs that have charted on this chart recently have had much in the way of actual presence on Hot Dance, she may be relegated to a dance Airplay darling, but I think we're all better off for it. She's great in that regard. Finally, skipping past What Love Can Do by Bonnie and Clyde, finally falling down to #9 as it's leaving early. Well, that leaves something that I'm legitimately shocked actually managed to hit the top 10 at all, considering in its particular circumstance you don't usually sing songs like it actually getting there on media base, and that's Where Is My Husband by Ray at #10. Look, I get that the David Guetta and Hypertone remix likely helped get this a huge amount of spin appeal, especially on dance radio, but the fact that this is actually managing to be one of the rare non-dance songs to hit top 10 on Hot Dance at all, that's really telling of just how wild of a run this song has actually had, considering how much it's gone up and down the charts over its past couple of weeks. I'm just thrilled that it actually managed to get here and will make the year-end list. We are all better off for it. This song is excellent and still holds up. And on the opposite end, there are falls and fall-offs, and damn, it's unfortunate that every song that left this week is one that I actually like. Yes, we unfortunately lost Dopamine by Robin and To The Moon by Alok and ILLENIUM, but really both of these were not surprising considering the new debuts that both artists got this week. I think they're just better off with what they have, and both of those songs are better in that regard. And if it's going to take out Set Me Free by Armin van Buuren and Sasha, What If It Takes You Away by Will Sass featuring Malou, and Crazy by Miles Lloyd and Buns, all of which had really remarkable runs and will make the year-end list for 2026. Yeah, I'm not exactly that upset about these leaving. And given the higher than usual fall-offs this week, damn, not really many falls here either. And again, I'm not going to complain too much. Yes, we had Skin and Bones Damon Sharp remixed by Shab falling finally down to 29, which for a relatively new name who hasn't had any sort of chart presence before now, well, this does better than a lot of songs in this vein. And it is actually still really good, especially the remix. I'm not going to complain about it sticking around. But the rest are really all songs that are going to make their year-end list spots quite comfortably and are leaving naturally. Supernova by Zeller at 22, Come Find Me by MK featuring Clementine Douglas at 20, that utterly embarrassing remix of Cry For You by Side Piece at 16, and Dancer by Cascade falling hard to 13. It doesn't surprise me considering the new single is getting pushed, much to my complete and utter fucking disappointment. And ironically, that takes us to our jumps and comebacks, and really, outside of the long overdue comeback of Hold On by Nathan Dorr and Abby Flynn at 49, where I expect this will have zero consistent staying power considering how long it took to actually return after it debuted a few months ago. What matters most of the jumps, and man, we actually had a decent number of them. As stated earlier, Vision Blurred by Cascade Sid and Annabelle England jumped up to 32, unfortunately at the expense of Belong To Me by Annabelle England and Camino, which completely left the charts this week, much to my complete and utter disappointment. But the rest are just completely all over the place in quality. On one hand, you've got utter garbage like You and Me by Lucy and Raquel, somehow actually gaining a short-lived boost up to 41. I really hope this doesn't last. And All the Things She Said by Harrison at 28. We can leave this guy in the past. Why are we doing this? But alongside that, we had some welcome quality rising up alongside Where Is My Husband in the top 10. Strangers by Two Pilots, James Hersey and Artemis managed to actually break the top 20 at all odds at 19. Aperture by Harry Styles is continuing its welcome surge to 23. And Out of My Body by Anima featuring EJAE finally got a decent jump to 25. Again, that's an actual good song with EJAE's name on it this week. I wouldn't mind if that stuck around better. But moving on to Billboard's charts, and yikes, the debuts here, outside of two exceptions, are just rough. Waiting For You by Two Friends featuring Natalie Jane at 32, All the Things She Said by Harrison at 36, and Vision Blurred by Cascade Sid and Annabelle England actually managed to debut early at 40. Gross. But alongside that, we had Pull Me Closer by DJ Pauly D at 39, the first time that he's charted on Billboard since 2013, with a really genuinely great song too. What the hell is going on? And our unique debut that unfortunately only just missed the honourable runner-up, I Just Might buy Bruno Mars at 35. I mean, given the sound of this, I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up debuting on Mediabase in the future, so if that does happen, I might talk about it more in detail there. But considering the overall quality of this track and the fact that this is a very obvious follow-up to Silk Sonic, and considering how much I absolutely loved An Evening with Silk Sonic, I think you can understand why I was close to giving this the honourable runner-up. That's all I'll say for now. And on Mediabase, we had the 5 debuts, and 4 of them I've already covered, and all of them are genuinely great. When the worst is the generally fine Feels Like Us by Devolt at 44, one of the genuinely good songs from Experts Only this year. I'm not about to complain about it finally getting a run. And when you tack on the long overdue debut of Talk To Me by Robin at 47, that's already 2 really solid debuts. But then you get to the 2 big ones. Release the Pressure by Calvin Harris and Kasabian at 39, which I will expect will easily become a massive hit here, just like a lot of other big singles from Calvin Harris. And more interestingly, Don't Want Your Love by ILLENIUM and Ellie Goulding at 35. It's looking set to be an absolute massive hit on the charts, and considering Ellie Goulding's a radio darling on dance radio nowadays, yeah, expect this to surge up and become a genuine hit. Really welcome there, not going to complain. And after all that, we only get 1 debut to cover. And it's unfortunately the worst possible note you can end on, being, and finally, number 48, Air by Nico and Sway.
Party into the AM, y'all don't understand. Me throw my hands in the air,
It would be just our goddamn luck that we would end with this. and man, it feels really disappointing, especially coming out of Nico and Sway. But since I've not really had the chance to talk about Nico and Sway on this series at any point, considering they charted long before I even started doing this series, let me get my thoughts on them out of the way fast. Their club crossovers in Run This Town and especially Flavor are both genuinely great tracks, and I'm really happy I actually managed to give them some chart presence on Hot Dance. And even if their other dance airplay charts have been wildly inconsistent, they still have some quality like Nothing on Earth especially. I do like them more than I don't. I'm glad that they're still getting chart presence. But of course, their way of charting nowadays is by making a tech house cover of In the Air by Flo Rida and will.i.am. I'll at least give them credit for going for something that's not thoroughly overexposed in tech house as of yet, but my god, I really did not need this from these guys. And yeah, the quality is not good there either. Surprise. The key change of will.i.am's hook is not remotely good and sounds really pitchy and annoying. The instrumentation is just bland and boring with barely any melody to speak of, and the song just progresses in a really flat and uninteresting way where I'm not remotely surprised that this looks like it's not performing to their standards at all. It's just utterly pointless to me. Not the worst tech house remix I've heard by any means, but it's also one of the most pointless, and I really hope it doesn't last, just like Nico and Sway's last charting song on Media Base. So yeah, not good. We can move on from this. You're not missing anything by skipping it. And my god, we're finally done with this week, and really that's an unfortunate note to end off because the quality here is absolutely worth it. This was a great week. For best, it's easily going to Don't Want Your Love by ILLENIUM and Ellie Goulding, but you know what? I'm gonna give it a tie for honorable runner-up between Release the Pressure by Calvin Harris and Kasabian for being a really good, if admittedly flawed track that grows on me the more I hear it, and Fabienk by Angine de Poitrine. Yeah, I'm shocked by that latter one. It really stuck with me, and it's really impressive that an act like them is actually able to debut on sales. I'd like to hear more from them. For worst, it's easily going to Adrenaline by ATEEZ, followed by AAoD by Nico and Sway. Pretty obvious in both these cases. They're both the easy, obvious duds of this week. But next week, expect more Fred Again to debut, and hopefully we can get at least something to do with Just the Way You Are by Milky. It's been blowing up around the world in 2 different versions, and I'd love to see at least one of them chart next week. Oh yeah, there's also John Summit too. I'm looking forward to that for a number of reasons. But yeah, that's all for this episode of an analysis of dance. See you next time.